to walk humbly with thy God.
We thank God for the word on this morning. We thank God for the reading of the word. So going to our subject, and I have to be as real as I can. We have to look at the word corrupt. And so when you think of the word corrupt, and even with us on this panel today, when you think of the word corrupt, what's the first to come to mind for you?
Someone that doesn't do what's right.
Okay.
Something bad.
Something bad.
I think of corrupt as someone with the wrong mindset.
Wrong mindset. That's good. So I said that was such a strong word, corrupt leaders. And then you think of the word leader, leaders with an S. So we know that it's more than one. We're not just dealing with one corrupt leader. We're dealing with corrupt leaders with an S. So a leader, someone who leads, someone who's in front, someone who is leading the crowd and instructing the crowd to go left or to go right, or to obey this or do this, that, and the other. But there was a word in front of the word leaders, which was corrupt. So someone who is knowing, having, or shown willingness to act dishonest in return for money or personal gain. So just we're going to talk about the subject a little bit, corrupt leaders for personal gain. This is someone who is willingly and knowing what they're doing to get financial gain. It could be for a status. My young people out there, they could be clout chasing, wanting different, how many can get the most likes, but you're doing things with an ill intent. Your heart is not in it. You are doing things in a very corrupt way. So give me an example of a corrupt, a way of doing things. I was thinking of something. Sometimes when you think of a corrupt leader, we heard about the exchange, the what do you call it, Wall Street, the stocks
Dow
and
Jones.
everything, the Dow Jones situation. Thank you. So some of our leaders, they knew about different things that was going on. So what did they do before anyone else? They went and they put a stop on their stocks and bonds, knowingly that was corrupt. That wasn't the right thing to do, but they did it anyway. Please keep in mind, with our Sunday school, these are our thoughts and our opinions. Our thoughts and our opinions. Please, if you have anything to say in the comment section, please do. I see that some have joined with us, and a shout out to Christian Academy as well. So with that being said, being a corrupt leader, knowingly doing something that's wrong, that's going to have you gain a personal gain or a personal interest. Another example
That tend to use their positions for power or for gain, and then basically oppressing the poor or ones that don't have it. Their situations aren't as good as them, so they tend to just step over bounds of the power that they have.
So my mother would say, and again, as I was younger, she would say, stealing from the poor to give to the rich. And as a young girl, I really didn't understand that. But as I got older in my late teens, now I understand. So this is something that the corrupt leaders, another example of what corrupt leaders can do for us. Any others, please fill in with us. Those of you who are joining with us on live here, what are your examples of corruption, or what is a corrupt leader to you? So going into the lesson on today, this is a great lesson, and I told our evangelist here, I said, wow, the more I studied this lesson, the more I couldn't help but to think about the current state that we're in with just different things that's going on. The first verse, so let's go back give a little history here. We're speaking of the minor prophet Micah. Micah was a minor prophet. And Micah had a very important job to do. Micah had to go and he had to let the people know about their corrupt ways. At this given time, there was two particular houses that he needed to talk to, and he went to these particular areas in the land, and he was trying to he explained to them, we've already seen what has happened to the other tribes. Now this is what you need to do. And sometimes I think about prophets coming in, I can hear my dear elder in my ear, he'll say sometimes prophets are not welcome in their own home. Prophets at that time had a lot of hard things to do, and this was another task that he was given as a prophet, was to come and tell the people something that was not a comforting message. You know, sometimes we want to hear those feel good messages, and we want to know, oh, everything's gonna be okay, and this, that, and the other. But what happened was he was coming to expose those who were corrupt. He was coming to let them know, change from your ways, and you need to repent. And a lot of times we get kickback from that, or we'll say, oh, he don't know, or they don't know what they're talking about. So I just want to talk about that. If you were in Micah's shoes at this time, in this present time, and you had to deliver some information, Evangelist Frankie, and you had to deliver some information that was going to save the people's lives and save their country land. We're going to get into the lesson a little bit more, and we're going to talk about different things. But if you were in Micah's shoes and you had to deliver that message, how would that go in this day and time?
I believe that there would be people that would be willing to receive, because first of all, we need to always consult God. In everything that we do, Proverbs tell us to, in all our ways, acknowledge him, and he shall direct our paths. Everybody did not receive Jesus, so everybody's not going to receive us. But the message for those that would receive from God, they would truly be blessed.
Evangelist, any thoughts? That's fine.
I agree with what Evangelist Frankie said, and I think one of the main points of the lesson is that with the corruption with the leaders, one of the things that stood out was that it was every group, and again, people are not going to receive us all the time, and we do have to go prayerfully, and because some things are going to fall on deaf ears, no matter how we say it, no matter how we bring it, it's going to fall on deaf ears. But if it's from God, we have to be obedient to what God tells us to do and deliver the word.
Micah was in a very uncomfortable situation. However, he still had to deliver God's words. Sometimes, even being with the fact that he had to speak to Judah, we have to speak to our own people. Him being a prophet, he had to carry himself upright first. Then he had to deliver what thus saith the Lord. A lot of times, in this dispensation of time, we know that people don't want to hear from us. However, we still have to do what's right and deliver God's word.
Amen.
And just when Elder Owen said that, it made me think of this definite format that we're in right now. You know, I know that some have different thoughts of being distancing and everything like that. And when I walked in this morning, I said, wait a minute, we're a little close here. But, it goes back to what Elder Owens just said. We have to continue to spread the message. We have to continue to say what thus said the Lord. And being in Micah's shoes with me, that's why it's always great to have a relationship, so you know how to go within and talk to the people and deliver such a very hard task that Micah had to do. In verse 1 here, in chapter 3, it seems as though, if I was just going to paraphrase this, he said, I pray of you. To me, it seems like I'm praying for you, O heads of Jacob. He was letting them know, he called them out by name. So he was letting them know, I'm not talking to any other particular group of people. I'm talking to you. And it was so funny, because sometimes I think my sister just told me recently, I was going through something, and she says, you got to call it out. Call out what, I want you to call out that thing in particular. So Micah went and he said, O heads of Jacob, and ye princes of houses of Israel. He didn't say nobody else. He was talking to them directly. Is it not for you to know judgment? What's going on here? Is it not for you to understand that the judgment that we're going to have to deal with? And then going on to verse number 2, who hate good and love the evil, who pluck off their skin from off of them and their flesh from their bodies. My goodness, he was giving an example. He was saying, is this what we're doing? To your own people, to your own nation? I want to hear a little feedback from you all with that. But I was just like, wow, because at first when I was reading the lesson, I said cannibalism. He's giving an example of how strongly this is what it seemed like you're doing. And in further research, sometimes that was an example of saying, have you all ever heard stole the shirt off my back. Ooh, let's see here, 3, I believe, going on to 2 and 3, to pretty much examine how it was like, and then let's just read number 3. It says, who also eat the flesh of my people and flat their skin from off one another, and then break their bones and chop them into pieces. And chop them into pieces for a plot. So he was using this as as like a example, a parable, to say this is how you're doing. Isn't that something?
Amen.
That's deep.
I think one of the things that needed to be pointed out, because our lesson is corrupt leaders. So the leaders, basically, their heart had turned away from God. They were no longer in the will of God, and they were using their offices to basically to oppress the people, and like you said earlier, to rob from the poor to pay the rich. And so they had forgot what God had given them to do, or use their offices to actually to build themselves up. And so I think one of the things that we have to remember is that they had perverted the very office that they had. They used it to more so to their advantage versus doing what needed to be done for the people.
Elder Owens, why such a strong, the word was so strong and giving us such a strong example to know how serious and what their charges were at that time, what they were doing. How, I wonder, could you give us your thoughts about why was that so strongly needed?
Well, if we take a look at today's lesson, the lesson aim says by the end of the lesson, we'll evaluate God's requirements. And so there was a lot of requirements for God and how the leaders should actually govern the people. And so they were doing a lot of things that were dishonest. There was always a thought of we had to really protect our city. And so they knew economically if the city was strong, there possibly would not be an attack.